What's going on, guys? Big Mike, D717 Outlaw, back with you here today. So now we're going to be doing part 2 of the RD restoration, or at least the RD250 rebuild, I guess. So in the last video, we did the rear wheel. We got the bearings in, we got the brakes set up. We went ahead and got the rear wheel mounted. So right after I ended that video, I actually decided, hey, I'm going to throw the chain on it. I threw the chain on it, and we got some problems. So now we have some other stuff to figure out that, again, I think I addressed this originally in the video, but you'll get it here in a second. I have a stock set of shocks for this bike. From eye to eye, these are almost 16 inches tall. Stock shocks are only roughly 12.5 to 13.5 inches tall from eye to eye. So these shocks are definitely oversized. And the problem that we have to address today is the chain currently hits the swing arm and the bottom is very close to hitting the frame. But that's due to the swing arm being maxed at its angle. And like I said, I'm pretty sure that this is the max that the swing arm is ever supposed to go. So the bike does sit up higher than it will when it's running or once we get everything done. So I think what we're going to do is going to head swap our old shocks on, get the ride height lower, make sure the chain and everything still works, and then as long as that still works, we should be okay. But you can see a difference. So this were the OEM shocks. They've seen better days. These bushings are kind of going out. Looks like somebody beat them with a hammer at some point in their lifetime. But we're going to see. It looks like these might actually be compressed as far as they possibly will. But you can see the size difference on how much shorter these shocks are to each other. So we're going to try to get these on real quick, just to get the bike at a different ride height and hope that we can get our clearance issue. If we can get our clearance issues, then that means I just need to get a set of 12.5 tall shocks, which is what these are. If not, I'll get the 13.5s and then maybe just put a little bit of preload on the spring. But yeah, let's try and get these on. You can see how much tighter this gap got. So we're going to try and sit it back down on its tires and see where the suspension goes. I'm going to have to hook up the brake stop again, but yeah, you can see how much lower that tire really is. So yeah, let's test this out quick and see. We might have another slight problem on the other side of the bike. I'll show you here in a minute, but let's just get this thing back on its tires and we'll see if it works right. The other slight dilemma is I was kind of rotating the chain and stuff a little bit. Well, you can see the chain is now off. The chain, which I don't know if you can see a little bit of coloring down here, the chain hits that bolt. I had said something to Payson. Well, he had said that that might have been his bad. This bolt should be going the other way. It should be the head of the bolt, not the nut. So we're going to pull this out, flip it. That should give us our clearance because the chain is ever so slightly hitting the outside of the bolt itself and not hitting the nut. So we're just going to flip that around. Should give us our clearance and then we should be good. All right. Well, I went and sat on it. I couldn't get my camera set up at a good enough angle for you guys to actually see me test it. The shocks compress a little bit, but I know that if I put a pan, like I put the actual fender on, which actually sits a lot lower than this rail here, it's definitely going to rub. So if I don't do that, which is easy enough, as long as I keep the seat pan higher than this, which it should be, or somewhere in that aspect, the suspension is actually okay. We went ahead, rotated that bolt, and it's kind of hard to get in there, but now nothing touches. And everything moves pretty freely. Honestly, for this bike sitting as long as it has, and I have to check the fluid for the transmission and stuff, like, everything rotates very well on this, so I'm pretty pleased with that. But I'm going to go ahead, snug everything up. I did notice, though, after I loosened this, is I think I did put these adjusters upside down because they do have on the bottom side a little notch that you use for your adjustments going through here. And I kind of did that on both sides on accident. The other side, you can see that little notch on the adjuster there is supposed to go on this side, so that way we can use it to line up on those marks. But hey, it is what it is. I can still play with that because, like I said, it's not hard, especially with this setup, to make sure that the chain is lined up and make sure that it's not angled or the sprocket's not cocked any kind of way. But she looks pretty straight, and I think we're pretty good with that. So, all right, guys, so we went ahead and kind of tidied everything up. Like I said, this is going to be a multi-day video for me, but for you guys, it's going to be one. But for today, I went ahead, flipped the adjusters around. We got the shocks on. We got the chain and everything figured out. We got our clearancing problem figured out. The only thing I do have to adjust that I didn't take notice to until just a few minutes ago is see how this adjuster is actually on the last adjustment, which is making this shock a lot softer. The other shock, which I don't know if you guys can see, is currently maxed out. So one side is stiffer than the other, so I'm going to play with that a little bit to try to find a happy medium for those. But before we get into too much, remember that we got the free bike, which was my dad's little project that we've been kind of working on the side. So we went ahead the other night, and I should have filmed it, and I didn't, but we started stripping it down. And I said before, we're trying to do a bobber project. So we got the bike to turn over. I might actually try to get it to turn over here in a minute for you guys, but I'll show you what we have so far. Like I said, you can tell we're leaning towards the bobber. So my dad we do have a rear fender on the way. We have a Springer seat coming. He does have new bars. He's going for apes, not necessarily to me, the bobbers. Typically, I always see more drag bars or bars slightly similar to this, but he has some stuff on the way. We're going to start tearing into this a bit more, but let me go ahead and try here, see if I can get this thing to fire up and you guys can hear it. It does run a little rough. I definitely have to go over the carburetors and try to get everything figured out. It does have a fuel leak, which again, I believe there's an O-ring, which I can actually show you guys. Right above where the carburetor, where the fuel and stuff comes out, there's an O-ring up there that's leaking. And whenever the bike is turned on and there's fuel moving through the lines and everything, it seems like it starts leaking just a little bit out through over here. But we're gonna go ahead, I'll fire up for you guys. Like I said, she needs just a hair of TLC, but it's enough to at least have a running bike. Some carb work and stuff done, but we at least got her to fire up, and it honestly doesn't sound bad. The Cobra pipes give it a pretty good sound for being a Japanese V-twin. All right, guys, a couple days later, we got a parts delivery. So we ended up getting from Dime City Cycles. I'll put their website and everything down below. We got our fresh bearings. So these, I was actually able to take my caliper, do some measurements on the hub itself for the front wheel, and we were able to get the proper bearings to run with the axle and the hub size. Went ahead and ordered a new clutch cable because the old one, the head of it was broken off. And then we also ordered a speedometer cable because I found the insert in one of the boxes, but the coating was destroyed. So it didn't have the threaded section for both ends, which goes right to the back of your speedometer and everything like that. And then the other part threads in on this side of the Speedo assembly. We also did order some Canan style pod filters, if I can open this with one hand. So I was gonna put the original airbox back on, but trying to keep things pretty minimal, went ahead and just ordered these pod filters. Also, I didn't realize it came with it as a black clamp, so it'll look pretty clean. So pretty much the biggest thing we're going to try to do is get the rear, or not the rear, get the front wheel assembly on, and then that means the next video I can start working on carburetors. Guys, put the bearings in the freezer, and they went right in. Also put, I think you can kind of see it if I cock it off to the side. There's a little sleeve that goes from bearing to bearing that we put in the middle. But both bearings are in. We're gonna go ahead and put our speedometer components in. So going with the speedometer, there's this little spacer with these little prongs on it. So easy enough. These prongs go in here. And then kind of to help you get an idea as to what's going on. So I did put a seal on the end of the speedometer setup, but there's a little grooved washer here that goes just like that with the recess section in the center. And then easy enough, you just line these little tabs up. A little bit of a snug fit with the seal, which I might actually tap that seal in just so it sandwiches in there a little bit better. But yeah, we'll have our speed assembly on the bike. Have the assembly in minus the actual speed assembly over there, just because I have to put the hub on that side. But that means we can go ahead and get the brake on, which I might actually have to go to the store and get some bolts, because this recessed section, I'm assuming that all I can use are these kind of cap heads, which these fit, but they are very, very long. So I might have to go and get some similar. These screws here I actually do think are, oh no, they're not the right bolt pattern. Well, might have to run to the parts store. Well, I guess another good reason to go through stuff before you leave, I found the bolts. So these are for the rotor, because these little keepers, how they have that little fork end on it, there's a, I don't really want to say if it's a nipple or it's like a little tab on the back side here that all this does is just kind of locks it in. And yeah, so we found our bolts, so I just gotta maybe go ahead and clean these up. Looks like they're a little rusty, but that kind of goes with the rat rod look. And I even found the bolts for the brake itself, because it has the keepers that Yamaha uses on these things. So we got our little keepers that go around from hole to hole. So I think we're about good. All right, well, after a little bit of cleanup, these upper bolts didn't clean up as good. You can see all the pitting on them, but the main bolts, they went in pretty good. These retainers didn't clean up too bad either, but everything's good to go. Out here you can get a better view of those little nubs I was saying about. I was wondering what they were for, but at least we found these spacers. Now we know what they were for. But yeah, we can go ahead, get the front wheel on. All right, boys and girls, looks like we got some pretty good progress. I mean, the big thing with it, so I'll show you guys somewhat the mechanism for the speedometer and everything, but we got the axle and stuff in. I'm gonna double check and make sure that there's not a washer that I'm missing. I'm gonna just check parts, schematics, and things like that. But we'll get the brake on, which shouldn't take too much. I believe the bolts are in this tub underneath. But we got our front wheel on. So now, quick thing. So this is that speed assembly. So in order, like you would think it just rotates with the wheel. Well, that little edge there catches this little edge here and it stops it. So now it is registering how fast the hub's spinning. The piece that comes out of here is square, so that's internally spinning through the tube, which will go up and go right into the back of our gauge. And that should tell us on that gauge is kilometers an hour, which is perfectly fine with me because it's a Japanese bike. And it came as far as I know, the C spec, which was the RD250C, was Canada, kilometers an hour up there. So it's not in freedom units, but hey, it'll do. I can still figure out how fast we're going. But we got the front wheel on. Let's just get the brake. And I'm not sure if we'll finish up with the hydraulics today or not, but we're getting closer, boys. All right, guys. Well, actually, I got everything snugged up here. Just because of a little bit of TLC that I want to do, we're going to actually cut the video there. We finally have the RD on her wheels. I'm pretty happy with where it is. It sits good. I sat on the bike. The suspension, everything feels good. I just have to, like I said, actually. All right, guys. Well, we're pretty much going to end it with this. So I'm going to go ahead and put on the Speedo connector. So just like I was saying before, this is square. So like I was saying, is as that mechanism spins, this will rotate. I don't know if you guys will be able to see this or if I can set it up to where you can. If I'm spinning the other end, that spins internally, which spins the mechanism, giving me a reading, but spins coming out of there. So yeah, that's pretty much how this works. Just threads in top and bottom, but we're gonna go ahead and throw this on and then we'll at least have our Speedo connected, but that's pretty much where we're gonna wrap it up here with the bike because I gotta do some TLCs on the disc brake. Looks like the caliper, looks like the caliper might need a little bit of rebuilding and refreshing, and we're just gonna save that for the next video because I think we actually might tear off the carbs and do a brake and carb refresh. And then hopefully we'll be able to fire it up here within either the next upload or the upload after that. But all right, guys, let's keep getting to it. Let's get this Speedo hooked up and call it a day. But yeah, guys, we'll call it a day there. That little eyelet, I think I might be able to take advantage of it and put a little clip that'll hold the line here and kind of take advantage of this little bit of extra coating that runs down here just as a protectant, that if it would ever touch the tire for some reason, it's going to be out of the way. But no, we should be good to go. Everything's nice and snug. And again, this is an aftermarket one. I kind of like this because it does have our neutral light, it does have a high beam, and it does have a light for our turn signal. Plus, the biggest thing too is the cluster. We probably could do just a plug and play for the cluster, but the thing is that cluster does not have the bracket and everything that I need for the ignition. So we're just kind of going to keep the ignition set up the way that it is, that Payson had it, and we can just go around and get everything plugged in. The only little bit of wiring we might have to do is just whenever I go to do hooking up this speedometer. That'll probably be the only little bit of extra wiring I'll have to really do, which that will be a whole other video that we're going to have to go through, is diagnosing and probably rewrapping the wiring harness and getting things ready to be under power once again. So yeah, we're gonna call it there, guys. Thanks again for checking out the channel, guys, and I hope this was a good video for you guys. As always, drop a like, drop a comment, don't forget to subscribe, hit that little bell for notifications. I will see you guys in the next clip. Remember, ride safe, ride smart, always wear a helmet. See ya.